Congressman Mast joining us now. Let's talk about Afghanistan.
You know, I could talk about a lot. The president addressed the nation yesterday. I said prior to him speaking, everybody that they have been sending to the microphone and to the camera from the beginning of this Afghanistan hostage crisis right up until this moment, they step up to the microphone to tell you lies. And I'm saying that seriously. They step up to tell you a lie. A couple days ago, you had Secretary of State Blinken expects the American people to believe this. Basically says, listen, the terrorists, the Taliban told us that they wouldn't allow terrorists to use Afghanistan as a safe haven. The terrorists said they wouldn't allow terrorists to use Afghanistan as a safe haven. They expect us to believe these kind of things. The president, and I would ask anybody, just think objectively about what President Biden says were his goals with Afghanistan. He said, in my view, we have one objective: make sure that Afghanistan can never be used again to launch terrorism. Anybody that objectively looks at this says it is so much more likely that Afghanistan is now a launching point for the Taliban, for Al-Qaeda, for ISIS, for ISIS-K, for any radical Islamic jihadist terrorists. And now they're well more equipped than they've ever been at any other time in their history on Earth, all because of this administration. If that was his objective, then he flat out failed.
Brian, one of my concerns above and beyond even what you're describing, and those concerns I think are extremely real. We had not talked about any of these. Or the Taliban, most Americans hadn't even thought about in over 15 years. The Al-Qaeda, most Americans hadn't thought of since we took out bin Laden over a decade ago. And ISIS, nobody had thought about them since Trump followed through and bombed the blank out of them 4 years ago. And here we are with all of them on the scene. And the difference between now and 20 years ago is technology, where it's more easy for them to radicalize around the world and perhaps to carry out some of their ill doing. So that's all real. One of my other concerns, we've heard about a spike in VA calls for mental health services from vets that have served over there. And you know better than most what that entailed and the sacrifices that so many have made. I also worry, Brian, about those who are asked to leave without bringing Americans home. I know that in the military, you're trained that we don't leave anybody behind. And I have little doubt that our heroes on the ground that I believe were set up for failure did not want to leave until they had Americans out of there. How heavy is that going to weigh on them as they come back home?
It's a heavy burden for many that were over there. Our Marines, our Rangers, our others that were there directly, that what did they do? They did their job. They stood the line. They towed the line and said, terrorists aren't going to come beyond me. I have a mission. That is to get Americans out. It's a substantially more dangerous mission than it was prior to the president pulling out, all of the military and then having to send them back into a hornet's nest that they spun up, significantly more dangerous. But they were there with their commitment to do their job and not allowed to finish it after the president made a commitment. He said, we will get every American out. We will get everyone out. And then they backtracked on that and said, no, we're going to be intimidated by these terrorists at every step along the way. If they tell us to, get out of our airbase, we're going to leave there. If they tell us to get out of the embassy, we're going to leave there. If they say we got to be out by this day, we're going to get out by this day, instead of us being the United States of America and saying, no, we're going to do all of those things when we want them, how we want them, and in the way that we choose to do it. That is what Americans would go in there and do. That's what President Trump would have gone in there and done. That's what President Biden should have done. It's what he didn't have the stones to go out there and do. And this is how it weighs heavily on them. I can't tell you how many cases my office is working, but we're doing hundreds of cases for those that were left behind. Both Americans and interpreters, people that worked with us. And most of those cases for interpreters, they came from veterans saying, I worked with this guy. Here's a picture of me and this guy. Here's the story of how this guy saved my life. This is us on the battlefield. I made that promise that if they served with us, we would help them get out. And now we're leaving them behind. They feel like they feel exactly the same as if they would have left an American from Oklahoma, Texas, or somewhere else that they joined up with in the military behind. It's the exact same way that they feel.
No sooner had the last troops pulled out, then the Taliban celebrations began, but we also had reports on the ground of door-to-door executions that began. Your thoughts about what is happening in real time over there?
Nobody should be surprised at that. Everybody knows that the Taliban, they wish to rule by Sharia law. Women can't have jobs. Women over the age of 8, they can't receive education. They have a book. They're learning to spell. They're learning to do math. That's against the law. Penalty for a lot of these things, death. Kill the parents. Make slaves out of the children for their soldiers. That none of that is hyperbole. That is who the Taliban are. I've said it before. I wouldn't even call them dogs because that's an insult to the animals that we all love. There's so much less than that. They exist only to be terrorists, only to be totalitarian and control anybody else that does not want to conform to their brand of Sharia law. They're exactly the same as Al-Qaeda. And the only thing that separates the Taliban right now from ISIS, the only reason that they broke off is because ISIS didn't believe that Taliban was quite brutal enough in the way that they execute those laws. That is the difference.
Congressman Brian Mast, best wishes in these rescue efforts that you're working on right now. May God bless you, and thank you for everything you've done and continue to do, sir.
Thank you for always paying attention.